A few weeks ago, I got a question via email from someone who'd seen one of my first videos, in fact, the very first one where I talked about the Ray Bradbury method of writing short stories. And this chap, writer from somewhere in America, was asking the question, what's the best Masterclass or Maestro style course for writers? And I gave him an answer via email, and I thought I would turn that answer into a short video article because you might find it of interest. So, I'm sure you're familiar with Masterclass and BBC Maestro. They are both hosts of streaming courses, which are both taught in very much like an informal interview style format. On Masterclass, you'll find ones, and I've just picked out a few. There are lots more, and what you might be attracted to will depend on the genres of writing you're interested in and the authors you like. But there's James Patterson's got one on writing, N.K. Jemisin's got one on fantasy and science fiction. That's definitely on my to-watch list. Dan Brown's got one on thrillers. David Baldacci, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, also thrillers. And probably the best one of the bunch was by Neil Gaiman, but that was removed. Has been, if you're unaware, some controversy about Neil Gaiman and some of his actions. Not interested in talking about it in this video. You can't get that Masterclass anymore, but I've seen bits of it, and I thought it was pretty good. When I say bits of it, I think I've seen at the time when I had a Masterclass All Access Pass for a couple of years. I think I've watched 75% of that one, and I thought it was pretty good. BBC Maestro similarly have got a number, not quite as many as Masterclass because they didn't start making them until recently. They've got Agatha Christie, a mystery one, and if you're unaware, you know Agatha Christie has passed away. What they did was the Agatha Christie estate scoured through all her papers and writings, and all of the spoken word was scripted from Agatha's own writings, and then they got an actress who looked a little bit like Agatha Christie. She then voiced all of the text that had been painstakingly created, and then they used AI to just tweak her appearance to look and sound more like Agatha Christie. So just so you know, if you're unaware, there are videos on the process which are quite interesting in and of themselves. And if you're a fiction writer, those videos detailing the process should set your idea muscle flexing and thinking of ideas. Anyway, they've also got Ken Follett. His class is on best-selling writing. Lee Child, he's on thrillers. Harlan Coben, he's on thrillers. Alan Moore on storytelling. I'd quite like to see the Alan Moore one. I've not seen that. And the year that I had an all-access pass to BBC Maestro, I just never made myself the time to actually watch it. Hey-ho, that's for the future. So which one of these is the best? Now, there are some good sections in some of the classes that I've taken, and I'm sure there are some good sections in some of the ones that I've not, that I kind of think, yeah, I'd quite like to watch and listen to that. But none of them are really stand out, and none of them are designed, in my opinion, with my deliberate practice hat on, to help you actually implement the teaching. So instead of them being teachers in the sense of here's some information, here's how you apply it, here's how you learn, they're more preachers. This is what I've done, this is how I do this, this is what I did when I'm confronted with this problem. And that can be helpful if you're at the same or similar points in your writing path to what they're talking about, or if you're a similar style of writer. So, for example, James Patterson is a very detailed outline writer, whereas Lee Child is a discovery writer. And so if you're a detailed outline writer, the James Patterson class would probably work better for you than the Lee Child class, and vice versa. But the best course of this type that I recommended to the student who emailed me, I'm not sure he wants his name read out, and so I wouldn't do that anyway. But it's not any of these, and it's actually, this is a screen grab of of what it is, and it's Gary Provost's video novel workshop. Now, you've probably not heard of this. It was filmed in early 90s. I was going to say 1995, but early 90s. So there are some caveats before we get on to the pluses. The biggest caveat is the course is not currently available. I emailed Gary's widow. If you don't know, Gary passed away in the early 90s at an early age. Great loss to the writing community, in my opinion. His writing on teaching and things for writers is some of the best out there, even though he's not been with us for 30 years to modernize it. But writing is writing, and the foundations will remain pretty much the same in 50 years' time as they were 30 years ago, 40 years ago when Gary was writing. So that's the first caveat. The course is not currently available. His wife, widow Gail, says she thinks a new generation of Gary's students are going to take it on and re-release it. If that ever happens, I will make a video article and point you in the direction. And it's a real shame, because for the last 3 or 4 years the course has been given away for free with voluntary donations. I bought a copy in 2018 and I think it was around $90, so similar kind of price to if you buy a single Masterclass or a single Maestro. But I've not really looked at it. I bought it because I knew I would want it at some stage in the future. It never occurred to me that that might be 7 years in the future. Again, hey ho, it is what it is. So it was filmed in the 90s, and it looks like it was filmed on a low budget. There's not many cameras, so there's not any cutting to make it visually more interesting. There's not much in the way of B-roll footage to cut away to while Gary's talking. So if you can get past that and get to the pluses, the content is outstanding, and especially if you're more on the beginner end of the writing spectrum. Gary is a great teacher, and more importantly, he suggests exercise that you can use to implement what he's actually teaching. Now, again, with my deliberate practice hat on, and if I'm being hypercritical, he doesn't suggest enough exercises, and it's very possible that you could take the content and turn it into a detailed workbook, which would really help you with both your writing and your moving forward to writing your first or second novel, wherever you are on the spectrum. As I said, it's great if you're on the more beginner end, but if you're more seasoned, if you've written novels and short stories like me, I've written 3 novels and scuds of short stories and some novellas, but I still found some great content, which I'll talk about the 3 best pieces in a moment. One other plus, the course has been turned into a book. After Gary unexpectedly, I think he was in his early 50s when he passed away, and I believe I'm right when I say this, the video content and notes that Gary had were handed over to another guy called Peter Ruby, and he turned it into a book, which you can get, I think, $2.99 on Kindle. So that will be the best $3 you spend today if you don't have it already. I will give you a caveat on the book. Although it does take Gary's content, it isn't the greatest translation of his content to the written world, in my opinion. And the teaching and perhaps the passion in Gary's voice when you hear him speaking live, the content on the video is at least one notch above, if not more. But you can get it. You can get the content in this book. I've also taken, so for the last 6 weeks I've been working through this. I've got about 3 lectures to work through, and I've created a PDF of my comprehensive notes of each lecture. Now, I'm not selling that, and I kind of given it away for free. It's a bonus for joining my monthly membership called the Writing Vault. More on that later, but I think it's worth its weight in gold, and probably a more faithful because I've not tried to turn it into prose, it's probably a more faithful recreation of the content that Gary teaches in the workshop. Now, here are my takeaways from the workshop. 3 biggest takeaways. There's a lesson on the 5 structural levels of a novel, and I watched that and I stopped. I didn't go on to the next one, and I sat at my computer for 10 minutes thinking about it. And if you've seen some of my earlier videos, in one of them, and I'm already closing in on 30, so I've got no idea which one it was. I was talking about my longer term goals, which are to start writing again, which I've started, start writing short stories, use short stories to hone a writing process and lift my writing up a level or 2, and then from short stories transition to novellas and telling longer form stories in novella length episodes, and then from there going up to novels. In preparation from that, and if you've seen the hero's journey analysis I did on the first Harry Potter film, I'm currently doing the same on the first Hunger Games film. You'll see that analysis in the next week or so start to come out. I'm starting to try and build my long form story model, and I'd come to separately because I've never watched these before 4 or 5 weeks ago, although I have read the book How to Write a Story, but I don't remember anything from it, and maybe this came on a subconscious level. But so my long form model, which I'm still working on, is remarkably similar to Gary's 5 structural levels of a novel, and I'm going to do a video article on Gary's 5 structural levels of a novel, and in that I'll talk about mine as well. But it's basically, so the phase I'm at the moment is the top level of the novel is a structural spine, which for me will be done via the hero's journey. Gary's structural spine is something I'll also do a video article on, because it's a different story model effectively that I've never seen anyone teach before, so I'll definitely be doing a video article on that. And then from the hero's journey, to give you the structural spine, the next level down for me is sequences. The next level down from sequences will be scene and the scenic structure of the sequences, and then the next level down. So for me, it's at this point in time, it's a 4-level structural overview of longer form content, and then the 4th level will be writing line by line to create the scenes. And I'm just looking at the moment at Dwight Swain's Techniques of the Selling Writer, and probably incorporating his scene and sequel method into that layer of the novel framework. But Gary has his own 5 structural levels of a novel. As I say, I'll do a video article on that probably this week, actually. So that was one of my first big takeaways. Towards the end, I can't remember the number of the lecture. I think it's maybe 19 or 20. But he goes through, and you'll find this in How to Write a Story, the book I just mentioned. He goes through his 14-step process for a beginner to write a novel. And I've never seen that I can remember any fiction writer. I've seen screenwriters like and screenwriting teachers like John Truby do something similar, but Gary had a 14-step process that you would follow from step 1 to step 14, and that would get you to the end of your novel. Really powerful for a beginner, because a novel is such an overwhelming chunk of writing. Let's say it's 100,000 words. Let's say you write 500 words an hour, then that represents 200 hours of work. Plus you've got to, if you're a discovery writer, then obviously you just do it, but you've got to come up with the idea. If you're more of an outliner, you've got to start putting things in place, and then you've got to revise it. So it's a lot of work to put a novel together. It's a big process, and he chunks it down into 14 discrete steps, some of which work on a loop. So you would do maybe steps 5, 6, and 7, and you do them 2 or 3 times. But I've never seen any fiction writing teacher do something like that. And if you are a beginner and you're working on your first novel, or you've tried to write novels before and just not made it, this could be something that you could use and or adapt for your own writing process. The third big takeaway was Gary's teaching on how you use character and character growth to drive plot. I know this is a flaw in my writing, and if you look at character and plot as a spectrum, I do veer too far in the plot direction. The video on how characters can drive plot with character growth for me was eye-opening, something I've got in my to-do list to watch at least several more times. And when I bought the original course, it came with audio as well, so it's on my iPod, and when I go for walks, I listen to the lectures as well to get deeper and more nuanced understanding. And even though those are my 3 takeaways, there is gold in every lecture. This, having gone through it now, my biggest regret is that I didn't buy it 15 years ago and go through it and start implementing it 15 years ago. Again, you can only play the cards as they lay in front of you, and that's where I am. So, but that's what it is. It's by far and away, of all the masterclasses that I've seen, this has got the most pieces of information per 10-minute video segment, however you want to clarify it. There's a lot in there. It's dense, it's compact, it needs repeated viewings and listenings, but if it ever comes back on again, on sale somewhere, grab it as soon as you can. It will definitely repay your investment, provided, of course, that you go through it multiple times, make your own notes, and start taking action and implementing. In the next episode, I'm going to create a couple of video articles on aspects of this course. I'm definitely going to do one on Gary's 5 levels of a novel, and I'm definitely going to do one on his top level story spine. I might do some more as well, because there's a psychological term which I've forgotten for this, but one of the ways to learn something and to solidify that learning so you internalize it is to teach it to other people. So I may take that approach and teach something like the character growth and how you would use that to drive plot. But anyway, there will be at least a couple of video articles and maybe some more. As I said, the notes that I've created, I'm still working on the last 2 or 3 lectures, but they'll all be compiled into a PDF. It's currently running at about 150 pages, so lots of detail. That'll be a bonus if you try out the Writing Vault. If you've got any questions on this or any other aspect of writing, the channel is still pretty new. It's July the 12th, I think, 2025. The channel is still new. I don't have that many subscribers that I don't answer everyone who emails me. When I get to the point where I'm getting 20 or 30 a day, 10 a day, that will change. But at this point in time, I'm getting a few comments and an email every other day, something like that. So I can answer each question that I'm currently getting in some detail, and hopefully that'll be helpful to you. It's also helpful to me because it gives me an idea of what people are looking to learn, and exactly as with this video, it gives me ideas for future video articles that may help your fellow writers, people who are in the same situation as you. Because if you have a question, I guarantee you there's 1,000 or 10,000 writers who've got exactly the same question. So do use the email address paul@deliberate-practice.com and send me your questions. And then finally, if you do want to check out the Writing Vault, the URL's there, writing-vault.com, but there will be a link in the description which will be underneath this video on YouTube. So thank you for your time. In an ideal world, I'll be able to say, here's a link to go and buy Gary's course. At this point in time, you can't. The next best things are either to buy the How to Write a Story. Again, Kindle, $2.99, so it's a no-brainer. It's less than the price of a cup of coffee. Or join the Writing Vault and you'll get I imagine the notes will be finished by the end of the week. And as soon as that happens, anyone who's in the vault will get them. Do one of those 2 things in the meantime. And I will catch you in the next video, and thank you for your time.